What's up, everybody? Thralls of Metal here. I'm Jammin Jon.
Necrotic Nick.
Shredlord.
Miller.
And we are bringing you the long-awaited ranking of the one, the only Suffocation.
Suffocation.
Suffocation, for me personally, has been one of my favorite death metal bands since I saw them live in 2006. And after that, they reigned supreme as far as my love of death metal. They've always been right near the top.
High school.
One of my favorite fucking bands ever.
High school, I heard them, I think, in 97, and yeah, that puts a date on me.
Yeah.
It was probably one of the first real brutal bands I think I ever got into.
Suffocation for me was Morbid Angel was the gateway into it for me.
The gateway to annihilation.
Yeah, exactly. And but Suffocation and Cannibal Corpse were what solidified my love for this genre forever. You know, and still to this day, there's not many bands that even compare to those two in that time frame. You know, you look for it and you look for it and you just end up going back to these albums from this time.
My opinion is going to be a little bit different because I didn't listen to as much Suffocation as the rest of you guys. I definitely listened to Morbid Angel, but Suffocation was something that I listened to a few songs here and there and didn't really super dive into until this discography ranking. So, yeah.
A fresh perspective.
Cool. And it was most enjoyable, for sure.
So we are going to rank all 8 studio albums and then 2 EPs, leaving out the re-cremated demo because it's just a demo.
Yeah. And the greatest hits.
And the greatest hits, yeah.
So yeah, we're going to get right into it. Human Waste, released in 1991. I personally had this at number 5. Man, what a first run.
Yeah.
What a fuck of a release for your first run. You know, my knocks on it would be simply the recording's really fucking thin. The songs are really good, but the recordings are really thin.
I mean, it's 91. It's a pretty raw recording.
But I mean, all these songs, dude. Infecting the Crypts, Jesus Wept was one of the first songs I ever saw played live, too, and that just, whew.
That's pretty much a live set staple, too.
Yep, and Catatonia. I mean, come on.
And Jesus Wept is one of the coolest lines in Hellraiser, by far.
Yes.
I ordered that shirt off AndyMerchStore.com. I ordered the Suffocation Jesus Wept shirt, but it's held up because I'm waiting for a beanie.
I had this one at number 7. I would say this was, once again, a very nasty start for the band. Frank Mullen sounds just absolutely disgusting. His vocals are absolutely nasty. The cadences seem like they're a little bit off on here.
There's no such thing as a cadence on this EP.
But, I mean, this is a really solid start, and it was different than a lot of death metal that was coming out. Like, there was
for sure.
more about those palm-muted chugs. Like, it was just thicker and chunkier. And granted, the production wasn't the best, but for a first effort, really solid. And Catatonia is one of my favorite Suffocation songs.
And it whoops so much ass live.
It is.
The Suffocation, in my opinion, Suffocation is never heavier than when you see them live. Like, that's where it's at.
I like this one, too, because you can hear the early grindcore influence. I know Frank Mullen and Terrence Hobbs have both said in interviews that they were heavily influenced by Napalm Death, and you can really hear that grindy sound to it. But yeah, this is a solid start for a killer band.
Yeah.
I put this at number 9, and the reason is 2 reasons. If you watch this channel, you know that an EP will never equal an album as far as in my rankings, just because to me it's like a very cool body of work, but an incomplete body of work. Body of work to hold you over. It's like the snack before dinner, which everyone loves a good snack, but it's not the full meal. However, Human Waste still was the better of the 2 EPs, which we will dive into a little bit later, the other one. Also, this is supposedly the first album that Relapse Records ever released. So they are a part of Relapse history as well. The other thing is, it ends up being the next album, basically. They basically re-record this entire thing a lot better, and it becomes one of my favorite things that Suffocation ever did. So, you know, number 9, not out of disrespect, but just because it's more of a incomplete body of work.
Yeah, Human Waste and Catatonia, I think, are the only tracks that are pretty much exclusive to this, or at least Human Waste was on the original demo, and they just threw it on here. But Catatonia is enough for me to really come back to this one.
Yeah, I had this at 9. Again, it's an EP. I agree.
Yeah,
it's a cock tease. You know, I don't like that. So I want it. So, number 9, not to say anything's bad about these songs, because the songs are killer. It is thin, but I can get past that and really recognize the riffing and stuff like that, and I like it. The vocals are a little across the board. There's not too much there at all, which drag it down. But, number 9, it's still Suffocation. I still fucking love Suffocation.
And then that would bring us to the first full-length, Effigy of the Forgotten. And now we switch up labels too. We end up on Roadrunner Records.
Oh, back when I could trust.
Back when you could trust Roadrunner Records.
Yeah.
In high school, I remember buying albums because they were on Roadrunner, and you could trust the name at that point. What, about 2000 or so? They signed.
It was really like after that All-Star record, because that was like
Did you say
03,
Pickle
wasn't
Crack?
it?
It was Pickle Crack.
Yeah. Yes. Since they signed Pickle Crack, things started going downhill pretty quickly.
I can see why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to buy everything Roadrunner came out.
Yep. Same here.
Yep.
That's how I found Obituary. I mean,
Isn't it sad that it'll never be like that ever again?
No.
Like we experience in some of the older viewers out there, like we experience purchasing music and the experience of music and everything in a totally different way than anyone is going to ever experience it ever again because of the digital age.
And skipping class and like getting there right as the record store would open.
Record store release day actually was a real thing.
All this time before the internet, man. People our age understand, but nobody else does. Yeah.
Fuck your convenience, man. Fuck your convenience.
But live vicariously through our stories.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember reinventing the steel, and I was like, I'm not going back. I'm not going back to school.
No, we're done.
No, I'm staying home.
The same thing happened for me when Great Southern Trendkill came out. We all skipped school.
And
jammed that cassette. So Effigy of the Forgotten comes out on Roadrunner Records. We get to keep the same lineup at least once more at this point. Scott Burns jumps in as producer, which is a very good thing because the albums he produced just a fucking
classics
thing of beauty. Mm-hmm. We get some Dan Seagrave artwork.
Yes.
So that's cool.
Everyone loves a good old Dan Seagrave.
Mm-hmm.
And also we get a guest vocalist on here too, Corpse Grinder. Guests on Reincarnation and Mass Obliteration doing backing vocals.
God, I love that guy. And he's so much
awesome.
better than Chris Barnes.
He had a thinner neck back then, possibly.
What?
I don't know.
I don't know if his neck was ever.
I think he just
thin. I think he was
like
born
that.
that
Like
way.
he was
Dude, that's a
dude. No, that motherfucker has headbanged himself into the neck of steel.
Yeah.
There is nothing normally like in a suit of armor. The neck is the weak spot. If you put him in armor, he would be virtually indestructible.
Yeah.
His neck might be able to repel more hard steel than actual chainmail.
If there was a neck Hall of Fame, he's a first ballot guy.
I had this at number 4. I really dig this record, especially because we get better production on it. I'm such a sucker for
Production's a big deal.
Yeah,
It is.
I'm such a sucker for better recording. And even so, I used to be a real big whore for excellent sounding records, but going through stuff like this and discographies and listening to as much as I've listened to now of death metal since starting Thralls, I like a raw sound too, but this just sounded a little bit better. And of course, songs like Seeds of Suffering, Liege of Inveracity. Yep, that song is killer.
I had this at number 2, and this one was a hard fight between my number 1 and my number 2. I love this album. This is pretty much the birth of brutal death metal. And Liege of Inveracity, all you slam guys, everyone that loves slam metal, this is where it came from. That breakdown in Liege of Inveracity, and there's other slam breakdowns on this, but that one, mainly because it's the opening track, is very important because literally brutal death just lives on that moment.
I mean, like Dying Fetus, you can hear it all over Dying Fetus.
Gorgasm,
Yep.
Devourment, tons of bands. But this is probably the most brutal album that came out in 1991. Literally nothing sounded like this.
For sure.
And Frank found a much lower register in his vocals, and he just sounds absolutely monstrous on this. Everything about this album is pummeling, and the better production is great, but I like the fact that all the grit is 100% intact. They didn't try to polish it. It sounds as aggressive and ugly as it's supposed to, and it is amazing to this day.
I agree. I had it at number 2. And it was really the second album I came across because I got into them a little later. But yeah, the Liege that song is killer. I love everything, and it really paved the way, this album, for a lot of death metal, and it showed that, because there's a lot of bad recordings around this time, and this showed that you can do this. You can keep the integrity of what death metal, really this was paving the way, but what it is, that grit, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And you could still have good production quality, which I
Scott Burns was really good about that. Like he brought up like how mixing pop was easier because there was a lot of empty space to work with.
Yeah.
With
Everything
death metal, it's constant, movement from the double bass pedals, the drums are going, the guitars are constantly chugging, so you had to find specific ways to mix that. And there was a lot of misfires before that, but he really was the guy that kind of found out how to do that properly back in the 90s.
And what you're getting at too is all about where the sound is in your spectrum. So a lot of this metal and stuff, even to this day, a lot of doom stuff is all registered in this bottom level. And if everything's in here, it's fighting for space.
Yep.
In pop, you can take your synths and you can cut below 400, 600, whatever, and leave all that room for bass and drums and all that shit. But with this style of music, the chugging, once you get that palm muting going with the bass and then a heavy drummer, a heavy kick drummer, it's crazy to get all that shit really sounding crisp and separated, because you're working with a little bit of space, you know? So, but he manages to do this for sure, and does it for
time and
for a
time
long
again.
time, yeah. He's really like Terry Date before, even Terry Date was working, but of this style of music, I guess. And they're not too far off in what the types of music they do. But yeah, I appreciated the recording quality of this for sure.
I had this as my number 2 as well. What I ended up appreciating about this the most is, once again, the production allows the musicianship to shine through. And when you are being this fast, this brutal, this heavy, it is nice to hear musicians that can actually keep up and play in time, no matter how chaotic it gets. These guys are going for it nonstop 24/7, and they are right in time like clockwork, and that is good to hear, because that just adds a tightness that not all bands have. And I'm a big stickler. If you're going to go for a big boy BPM, you better be able to play at the big boy BPM speeds and don't half-ass it. And the production allows you to hear the tightness of these guys and what they really had to offer as musicians.
God, Infecting the Crypts.
Yeah, this album fucking is stupid cool.
You will hear that every time you see Suffocation for a reason.
Yeah, I've seen them 5 times, and I think every single time I've seen them, they've played it.
I've only seen them once.
Oh, they played Catatonia quite a bit too.
Yes.
That gets played quite a bit live.
And also, I guess a weird thing about this album that I don't think we talked about, it was also dedicated to Roger Patterson of Atheist.
The bass player of Atheist, who died in a car wreck earlier in the year. Yep.
Atheist, another underrated band.
So then we move ahead a couple years to 1993, and we get Breeding the Spawn on Roadrunner Records. However, financial issues with Roadrunner, we'll get to that here in a minute, led to a lot thinner production. We lose Scott Burns, and we go back to Paul Baggin, who
didn't do as good of a job.
Didn't do as good of a job. Well, he did Human Waste. It wasn't bad, but boy did he screw the pooch on this. We lose also Josh Barron on bass. We get Chris Richards stepping in.
He's a solid bassist, so it was a solid fit right away.
Yep.
One of the few things you can hear on this album, Through the Mud, is his bass work.
And that's the thing. This record is just muddy as fuck.
And you're probably never going to hear it reissued because Roadrunner don't want to. That's pretty much it.
We don't want to.
Yep. And because that production was as poopy as it was, this gets my number 6. It's not that the songs suck, because the songs are fucking awesome. It's just so muddy to listen to. It's so unfortunate to listen to this. I just wish
it was better.
I wish it was better.
It was different, man.
I wish it was different. And that's why it gets to number 6.
I put it at my number 5. It was really disappointing to hear after loving the
and that
production
too.
of the previous album so much.
Right. You get a record.
But I still, absolutely. But I, in my notes, really still like the album, but the production just really killed it. They should re-release it.
They should.
They absolutely should.
I really think so.
Well, they've been slowly re-recording it over time.
Well, that too, right.
This band loves to re-record everything. That's one thing I learned about
great.
these guys.
This album particularly, and we understand why. I had this at number 3. I still love this album. It's just the production's, it's terrible. But the songs are great, and the fact that you hear these songs re-recorded over time, you get to hear them, granted with different production every time.
Yeah.
You get to hear how well written they were. And this was sort of their leap a little bit more towards technical play. Like, it still had all the brutality, but you could hear more intricate guitar parts, at least when it was re-recorded. But when it came down to like the bass work, it was more intricate. Chris Richards did a great job, and he actually was in Pyrexia before this, which does a lot more technical play too, and they were kind of on the cusp of all that brutal death metal as well. But it is really hampered by the mix, but there are great songs in here. Marital Decimation.
Yes.
I
love that song.
The title track is an absolute banger, and you will still hear that one live too. So
Prelude to Repulsion.
Yes. But again, it's just one of those, I really wish some label would buy the rights at least to this album and remix it, remaster it, give it that almost Scott Burns feel.
Please.
Because it's worthy of it.
Let Terry Date tackle this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. But yeah, this is a killer album. It's just hampered by bad production, but I could not get past how good the songs were. So, number 3.
Yeah, I gave it number 4, and I ranked it, and normally I'm a stickler for production and stuff, but it's Suffocation. It's like they're one of my favorite bands, so I'm giving them a pass, and that's why I rated it like I would if the production was on par, or maybe a little less, but man, they were just really on a tear in these years in writing and their musicianship and just on time, like you said. They're just on it, Yep. And I loved Marital Animalistic Offerings, that first riff. I love that first riff. That opening
sounds sexual.
Awesome.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it already.
So I love this album still, and I'll definitely jam it again. Headphones. I did better in
Oh
headphones.
man, that's the way to go.
Yeah, headphones.
That's the way to go. 100%.
Good
for
headphones.
sure.
You can't F with the sound quality of a pair of really good headphones.
No, you cannot.
I agree.
So we move now again a couple years along, and we get the almighty, fucking awesome "Pierced from Within."
What a fucking album.
Woo.
Yep. No shit.
Released in 1995, again on Roadrunner Records. Oddly enough, even though they were having financial problems with them on the record before. Whatever.
They got shit
They
figured
got it
out.
done.
They got it figured out.
This will be the last full-length record with guitarist Doug Cerrito. We do get him on another EP, but this is the last full-length. And this is also the last record with Chris Richards on bass. And also, we lose Mike Smith for a moment here, who is replaced by Doug Bone on drums. This is my number 1 record from Suffocation of all time. This record is a banger through and through. The production is killer. As we
Scott Burns!
Yep.
Yeah.
As we get Scott Burns back, thank the Lord. Scott Burns.
Big deal. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a
Dude.
huge thank God that
For
Scott
sure.
Burns is back, because this is how you want to come back after a record like the record before it, where the recording quality was absolute butt.
It's crazy because it was so like up here
Oh,
and,
dude,
zoop,
yeah.
and then
Yep,
up again
yep.
and
one guy. That's all I needed.
Yep.
Do all these songs. Of course, the title track, Thrones of Blood, Depths of Depravity, is nasty. Just, I adore this album.
This is my number 1 as well. This was, I shouldn't say easily, but this album had basically everything I enjoy about metal. Groove, riffs, heaviness. Checked every single box of the things I love. It's fucking badass. 2 more re-recorded songs, though. These guys love that. These guys love that. But I'm not hating.
I mean, they re-recorded
If they-
Breeding the Spawn.
Yes.
And thank you.
Yeah,
'cause-
yeah.
Yes.
And evidently
It can
this-
be a good thing.
It
In
can be a good
moderation.
thing. Yeah, and I guess this is their longest album to date as well.
Yep.
Yeah, 45 minutes and 31 seconds.
I remember you texting me when you had like sat down and listened, like,
Yeah.
dude, this is like really, really good.
But here's the thing, right? Me not being a big Suffocation fan, I was like, this is kind of like midway through the discography. I don't know, like, it's a little bit different than everything I've heard so far, but like I just remember telling the Chronic, dude, I think Pierce from Within is going to be like my favorite, wondering if that's going to be some obscure fucking pick, man. And he goes, dude, no, absolutely, you're right. Like, yeah all right.
I mean,
cool.
once again, I hate ranking discographies
Sure.
where the
When it gets
majority
down
of
to
the
that,
catalog is really
But we
good.
do it for your enjoyment.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm
you're
suffering.
welcome.
You're welcome, but I mean, it sucks to rank this just like it sucked to rank Testament, just, man,
How bad did it suck to rank Morbid Angel?
pretty bad. Let's be honest here.
It's always going to be there.
Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.
Bastard. All right.
Altars of Madness equals John Sadness.
We love the rhyme scheme.
I hate you both.
I want that
so
on a
much.
t-shirt. I want that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, there you go. You should make it.
I had this at number 1 as well. This was the first Suffocation album I ever listened to. The first song I ever heard was Thrones of Blood. It is up there with my favorite Suffocation songs, but Depths of Depravity, Suspended in Tribulation, that is the longest song they ever wrote. It's 6.5 minutes of just brutality. But this was an interesting change because not only was it brutal as hell, it was hook laden. There are legit riffy hooks throughout this entire album. The drum work is spot on. Doug did a great job stepping in for a monstrous drummer. And this is a little bit more groove laden too. I think the fact that they slowed down in spots, it wasn't all pummeling blast beats, but you had like really ornate bridges, lots of crispy lead work. Like, this is just an amazing album.
Crisp.
This is one of my favorite 90s death metal albums, flat out, and I think this is, in terms of death metal, one of the best jobs Scott Burns did. I love the mix on this. This album sounds glorious from start to finish.
Yeah, I had it at number 1, same as everyone else, and the production was there. Everything, for me, it's one of the top death metal albums for me all time. I will always go back to this album and listen to it. And this was actually the first album I ever heard. My buddy Chris led me onto it, and it just like blew me away. And they really, like, speaking of that tear they were on that I was mentioning, this was the peak of, the apex of it, I guess. And the songs were longer, which I appreciated too. We got songs that were like 5, 6, where before their songs were 3.5, 4 minutes, somewhere on there. So they really took those ideas and ran with them and then let them go places and stuff, which led to more grooves and more of this, and it just showed. This album's killer all the way through. If you haven't heard this and you like death metal, I mean,
What
You
the
had
fuck
to have
are
heard
you
it.
doing?
You had to.
Right,
If you
right.
love death metal, you have to have heard of this album.
right. If you haven't, there's something wrong. Someone,
I'm thinking for younger generations, there's stuff I bring up and they're like, oh no, I've never heard that. And it's like, dude, what are you doing?
find some friends that know how to do their job.
And
Show
if it
you-
wasn't
showing you music.
because of these
Yep.
guys, those 4 bands you just mentioned wouldn't fucking exist.
Right.
So,
That's fair.
So then we move on a couple of years into 1998, and Suffocation releases an EP. Now, it's not on Roadrunner Records anymore, it's on Vulture Recordings. Sometimes things happen with record labels. It
shit goes down.
unfortunately is not uncommon in the metal world to see a band that you've been following for a while just up and end up on another.
Yeah, I mean, all right,
record
given,
label.
given the time period, I mean, this is kind of when Roadrunner was starting to move towards the whole new metal thing.
Yep.
Death metal was not the prettiest girl at the prom coming the late 90s. They dominated the early 90s. But yeah, not so much here.
We lose Doug Bone on drums. His seemingly short drumming career ended. In fact, he isn't credited to do anything else beyond this.
Yeah.
He just kind of disappears. Maybe Pierce from Within was so heavy and so brutal that he decided, his brain exploded, and
did
he
a great
decided
job.
that there was nothing else he could do. We end up with Dave Coolross on drums. He's a hell of a drummer, so that's a great place to go.
Played Malevolent Creation. They also play very fast.
This is the last recorded appearance of Doug Cerrito and Chris Richards on bass and rhythm guitar, respectively. And the last album produced by Scott Burns. Because after this, the band takes a small hiatus, and by the time that they came out of their hiding, Scott Burns was done recording.
Yeah, he kind of
So-
became disenfranchised with the music industry. And you can kind of hear it on this mix. This isn't his best work.
Yep, for sure.
Inspired, it sounds.
Yep, that's what I was going to say in mine. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally uninspired in the mixing. He was just kind of checked out at that point.
Very flat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
There was just, he recorded it, set the levels, and was like, all right, this is good.
This record is my number 8. It's an EP. There's nothing really thrilling about this album. I think the only original, Devoid of Truth and Blood Churn.
It was my number 10. It was less than 10 minutes long, and the last song was a re-recording. Whatever. Next.
Yep.
Pretty
Same
much.
thing. EPs in general, I mean, I don't, in terms of rankings, but there are exceptions, I think.
Yeah.
There's exceptions to every rule. This is not one of them.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Carcass's EP would be an exception, I would say, but this isn't it. It's uninspired, and next 10.
Yeah, this was 10 for me as well. It's sad that there's like just kind of a fizzle out for the band at this point. Like, it didn't sound like anyone was really that on board. Even Scott Burns, like I said, this was not up to snuff with all his previous efforts. The songs are just kind of there. Like, I mean, the title track's all right, but this isn't one I'm going to put in heavy rotation. Like, none of the songs really jumped out.
I mean,
so, yeah.
And that sometimes happens too when you get a revolving door of musicians as well. Like, it's kind of hard to get in the groove of things if you're constantly changing members. And, you know, why bother to write something phenomenal if you know that, you know, two dickheads are going to up and leave, not that they're dickheads.
Yeah. Speaking from a perspective of a band that I've been in. And
right. Speaking from a perspective of, you know, the three of us
have
been in bands.
Myself.
Sometimes people are dickheads and leave.
I mean, we're waiting for that moment with Nick, but he's stuck with us so far.
Yeah.
I'll fire you guys live.
Yeah. Be a live stream. It'll be the first live stream. That's how we're gonna know.
He'll wait for the second one. He'll be like, all right, you guys had fun, huh? Guess what? You're fired.
I'll do it.
So, skipping past that POS, we get to Souls to Deny, which was 04. They were on a break there for a minute.
6 long years.
6 long years.
They made the return on Relapse Records.
Right where they
I
started.
like Relapse Records. I like Relapse.
Yep. We get Mike Smith returning on drums. Thank God. Mike Smith is such a hell of a drummer.
Yep.
I'm
One of my
so
favorites.
excited to see him come back. And then Guy Marcheas returns on rhythm guitar. I say returns because he was on the Reincarnation demo when the band started, so he was coming back to play.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Yep.
What, a decade later.
And when the band initially reformed, Josh Barron came in and played on bass, but then he was fired later for drug abuse. So it led to Mike Smith doing a lot of the bass, and then Terrence Hobbs doing some of the bass. So
Damn.
I did not know that.
Yep. And then after they recorded, when they went out to play live, that's when Derek Boyer started on bass.
They got him from Deeds of Flesh.
Which is a great place to come from if you just watch. Nick and I just reviewed that new Deeds of Flesh, and it's nasty. This is at number 7 for me. Albeit this was the first full-length Suffocation album that I ever heard. I don't like the recording of this album either. The recording of this, it's very bassy, and the songs kind of sound a little bit uninspired. Albeit I love the title track, the track Deceit, Surgery of Impalement. I like it, but I just don't like the way this album is recorded.
I had it at number 6, and I mean, it took a lot of moving parts to really get this one going. Like I said, you had Mike Smith and Terrence Hobbs both playing bass on this. And, you know, the production is odd. I think the vocals are really out in front and very dry. And, yeah, the songs are kind of similar, but there are some standouts, namely the title track. I think Subconsciously Enslaved is really good, too. You did get Dan Seagrave back for an absolutely amazing cover. But, you know, overall, it's not a bad album. It just kind of, you know, blends in kind of in the middle of the pack. It's still good, but
Plus, the guy that produced the album, Joe Sincata, this was pretty much his first rendezvous with producing death metal, because prior to this, he wasn't credited in a whole lot.
It takes a lot to record Suffocation.
From a recording standpoint, I think the drums may be the easiest, just because his attack is so on point. You don't have to worry about that. But
Yeah, Mike Smith's like a human metronome, and the way he beats the shit out of those drums.
Yep.
It's that full extension thing with this blast beats. Like it is just absolutely nasty.
Hitting everything at the same time. Whereas for a lot of death metal, you know, you at least get the separation of the hi-hat and the snare. But at this point, he was hitting everything: the kick, the snare, the hi-hat, everything. The cymbals all got hit at the same time. It just made it sound like a fucking explosion.
He was utilizing 100% of his abilities.
Yep.
And time, and he was on time. That's the most impressive part about that guy's drumming. It's just, he's like Chad Smith on time, but like brutally fucking fast. Like fast.
Yep.
And his attack is unmatched, really. Yeah, I had this at number 5, going to the middle of the pack. It's middle of the pack, really, you know, for me. So the title tracks is stuff you guys have mentioned too. Yeah, it's middle of the pack.
It's my number 7 as well. I agree with John. For 6 years being out of the game, for them to come back, I felt like this was a little bit of a weak comeback album compared to some of other bands' comeback albums. The other thing that this album seemed to suffer from, to me, is while it definitely was Suffocation, it had AC/DC syndrome to me, where a lot of the songs sounded very similar to one another.
That's a good way of putting it.
And that wasn't as appealing to me as some of the other albums in the discography.
So moving on, just 2 years after that, Suffocation comes out with an absolute banger of an album. Their self-titled album, again released on Relapse Records. This was the first recording, full recording with Derek Boyer on bass. I had this at my number 2. I think recording-wise, I think this was should have been the next in line after Pierce from Within. It's really close. It is a little bit meatier than the recording quality was on Pierce from Within. But like even the way the songs are written and flow, I think it just flows. To me, that flows naturally after Pierce from Within. But I mean, my goodness, right out of the gate. Abomination Reborn is an awesome song. The breakdown in Bind, Torture, Kill is nasty.
Yes.
Creed of the Infidel, the breakdown in Entrails of You. Dude, every time I listen to that while I'm driving, it just makes me want to fucking rage. On the road. Baseball bat.
That's probably one of my favorites on this.
I do remember listening to this album in 06 because I just graduated high school. To date myself, not too long before that. And I remember liking the album, but not like remembering the album, right? But then I went back to it and I was like, holy shit, this is really, really good. Like John said, this should have been the comeback album. Like, for real. This was great. A lot more quirky melodic parts, kind of more riffy. I dug the shit out of that. The production, of course, was great. This is basically a great blend of everything that kind of Suffocation has to offer you as a band. So I dug this. Yeah, number 4 for me.
Yep. Like I think the way this album is recorded too, and the way it sounds, I think it's very close to what they sound like live.
Yeah, from what I remember, this
it's been so long, hasn't it?
Yeah,
show's been so long.
I miss shows.
And really, like Souls in this can be flipped. Should probably be flipped on my list. But Joe Sincata is it separate?
Yeah.
Sincata.
He definitely got better. I guess the songs were just kind of like they weren't as impactful as some of their earlier stuff, I guess. So.
Okay.
This record does catch a lot of shit. I read a lot of reviews.
I don't know why.
On this album too, and I don't get it either. A lot of people say it's lackluster, but I totally disagree. I think this sounds.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far as
heavy as
lackluster,
balls.
but like you were saying, it's like you listen to it, you remember hearing of it, and it just kind of like you forget about it after a while, and then you go back to it and like, oh yeah, this is kind of cool.
This is actually better than I remember.
Yeah, but then then I'm going to go listen to the other ones.
Yeah.
I mean, when I went back to this one, I definitely fondly remembered it. But, I mean, I went back to Pierce from Within quite a bit more. But, I mean, overall, I had this one at 5. I think it's a good album. This is a better comeback album than Souls to Deny, at least as a mixing standpoint. I think there's more of a variety in terms of, like, styles that are in there. But it's still, again, 100% Suffocation. You get a little bit more, like, dissonant riffing in there. Just a touch more than was on Souls to Deny. But overall, I mean, you already said every favorite track.
Right.
Bind, Torture, Kill, Abomination Reborn, Creed of the Infidel. Like, these songs are absolutely nasty as hell. Mm-hmm. And in terms of their return to Relapse, this is probably my favorite moment for them on that whole run.
Yep. So then we move on a couple more years to 2009, and we get Blood Oath, released now on Nuclear Blast. So...
another good label.
Yep.
I enjoyed a lot of their stuff.
It's where they currently are.
Yep. This is the last album to have Mike Smith appear on all the drum tracks. Man.
His relationship with the band just seems to be kind of tenuous. Like, either they're all in a good place or he's like, man, I'm out. I'm done.
This was the first album to debut on the Billboard Top 200. Came in at 135 with 3,600 albums sold. So apparently to get on Billboard's Top 200, all you need to do is sell 3,600 albums. We have a little bit more subscribers to this channel than what they sold.
Yeah.
We should be on the Billboard, right? This record is mine, number 10. This is dead last for me. I don't like this album. I like the title track. I like the re-recording of Marital Decimation.
It's a great song.
And Dismal Dream's kind of cool, even though the chorus is a little annoying. Yeah, again, I don't like the way this album is recorded. It's got a lot of low end on it. It's very muddy again. It sounds drowned out. And this kind of, again, sounds like they also lacked things in the creativity department. A lot of these songs run together.
Really? Like...
Yep. Yep. This is my least favorite.
Much,
like I'll jam the title track of this all day. That song whoops ass, but that's about as far as I'll go on this record.
Yeah, I really like that song.
I had this at number 9. It's my least favorite of the full lengths. The production is off. I think it's interesting that we brought up that Derek Boyer wasn't as audible in the self-titled, but no,
he is
this
very
one,
audible in this.
Wait, find a happy
way
medium.
up front.
But yeah, the songs, they're technical as hell. There's lots of technical riffing on it, but there's not a lot of hooks. There's not a lot of stuff that I thought was particularly memorable. It just seems like it's missing a lot of energy. Like, this just feels like they went in the studio, like, all right, you got some tracks.
Right,
yeah, cool.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there are some decent songs. I like Mental Hemorrhage. Pray for Forgiveness is pretty decent. Provoking the Disturbed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terrence, actually, I think this is kind of a point where Terrence really started coming up with some cool leads. But unfortunately, the songs these leads were on were just kind of there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not terrible, but, I mean, I'm definitely going to listen to other Suffocation albums over this one.
Yep. I enjoyed the leads, but like you said, the stuff behind it, the riffing and just the base layer of everything was just, I don't know, it just didn't have much to it. It was forgetful, really. So yeah, I had this at number 7, so it's pretty low in the full lengths, but he started having problems with mixing that low end because it's overbearing a little bit, and then the vocals are just crazy. So yeah, number 7, strong 7 for me.
It's a 6 for me. It's middle of the road. It sounds like Suffocation, but it's less memorable songs than on like the self-titled and stuff. So a little bit. It's not my least favorite of the studio albums, but it's not my most favorite either. So
yeah, this album, the feeling of this album is exactly our tone throughout talking about this album.
We're just dynamics go like this, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Even
not,
though it's a really fast this.
I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
Right,
okay?
exactly. Right.
We're just sad.
You're not my
you know?
least favorite kid,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah.
So yeah, that album was exactly the last 5 minutes.
Timmy's report card was a lot better than yours. I'm just saying. Now go mow the fucking lawn.
But then we get a couple years ahead to 2013, and Suffocation releases an absolute beast of an album, Pinnacle of Bedlam.
Yes.
Again, a nuclear blast. So Mike Smith is gone at this point, replaced by Dave Coolross. It's his first full-length performance ever, and his first appearance since Despise the Sun. Mike Smith does, however, make a guest appearance on the last track of Beginning of Sorrow, re-recorded from Breeding the Spawn.
Once again, these guys continued their heavy trend of re-recording their own songs.
If you're not going to re-release it, then we're just going to re-record it.
Yeah.
This is the band's also last album with Guy Marcheus, who has been at this point with the band since 2003. Guy leaves the band full-time in 2016. As he states, he's pretty much done. He's just mentally checked out. And then in 2018, he's diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Hope you get well soon, man.
Yeah, we're rooting for you. Actually, I saw a guy play when Suffocation played at Frankie's in, 2015?
Yep, solid dude.
Yep. And they played in front of a crowd of, like, probably 25 people.
Yeah, but
There
we
was
were all
hardly
rabid.
anybody there, but we were
rabid.
Dude, they killed that night. It was amazing.
Kevin Talley played drums with him.
Yep.
When we saw him, and
He got my poster signed.
Yep. He took a picture with me. He remembered being in town. He was in town 10 years prior to that with Chimera.
Yep.
When they came, and he remembered too. He was like, "Yeah, didn't I play some venue a few blocks from here?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Do you remember that?" Like,
It was 10 fucking years ago, man.
Yep. This album sells 3,200 copies in the first week, and again lands on Billboard's top 200 at 152. So
It's a drop though. It's no
Good job.
135.
Yeah, I know.
Yep, I rated this at number 3. I adore this record. In fact, when I first heard this album, my buddy Nate Hammond, we were working a job together, and I was in my car enjoying some of the Devil's Lettuce on a break from work, and Nate came out and he was like, "Dude, check out Suffocation's new album," and I popped it in and just immediately fell in love. This record is so goddamn heavy. I mean, there's really not a bad song on this album. Purgatorial Punishment, that second track, that riff is nasty. As Grace Descends, Sullen Days,
yes,
My
Grace
Demise,
Descends.
dude. Oh my god, I love this record.
This is my favorite album of their more modern era.
Correct. Yep.
Dave Kohlross
for sure.
kills it on the drums.
Yes.
He is a speed machine.
Yep.
The crawling riffs that open up as Grace Ascends, that is one of the catchiest moments, I think, in their entire discography. I like the fact that you hear a little bit of that grind influence kind of pop up in that song, and then Eminent Wrath, which is another one of my favorites on here. This is an absolutely killer album. Modern production, but it's still raw and gritty. It doesn't sound too polished. The guitars sound really chunky. Bass could have come up a little bit, but, you know, whatever. Overall, this is just an absolutely killer album, and it has all the energy that Blood Oath was missing.
Yeah, and that's what I thought about this too, and why I had it at number 3. Because it came out and said, "Hey, you remember us? We're badass. We're still badass,
Right.
and we're gonna show you how badass we are." And they come out with this album, and it's one of those, because at this point I had kind of forgotten about them, really, because they hadn't put out anything that I was really totally stoked about. And then on a whim, I remember listening to this album and just blown away. Like, I'm like, holy shit, this is Suffocation. I don't want to go back to the other album. I want to listen to this one.
It's intense.
Yeah, and I love the intense feel. It's very frantic. Cycles of Suffering, especially.
Yeah.
I think this album perfectly describes Suffocation as a whole and what they offer. And it was a killer, and it's still one of my favorite albums.
Yep.
So my number 3 too. I believe I kindly referred to this album in my notes as Riff City, with a lot of excellent solos, especially the lead-in to the track Eminent Wrath is just a nice badass solo. Yeah, it was just super, super cool. And yeah, there's not a bad track on the album, and it is Riff City with good leads, so it's right up my fucking poop chute. So 3 all day.
I love
Twice
it.
on Sunday.
Love Riff City albums.
Love Riff City.
So then we move on to at least the last, I know Suffocation is working on stuff. I've been reading it. I don't know where they're at in the process, but I know they've been working on stuff. So we reached the last of what they have to offer from their recorded catalog. Of the Dark Light came out in 2017 on Nuclear Blast. So now this is the first album with Eric Moretti on drums, who is their current drummer. He's a hell of a drummer.
He's good.
I've seen him live twice now, I think. And then we also get Charlie Irigo on rhythm guitar.
He also played in Pyrexia. I don't know if he's there. Pyrexia and Suffocation seem to share a lot of members.
This record is my number 9. I think a couple songs are good. Clarity Through Deprivation, the title track of The Dark Light, Your Last Breaths. Pretty much everything they released as a single on this album, I think, was the better of the songs. This too sounded like it was a little bit rushed, and it sounded like they didn't fully know where they were gonna go with songwriting on this. And plus, Frank's not on even all of this record. This is their first album kind of without Frank. He appears on a couple songs, but not all of them.
He does the bulk of the vocals, but they have Ricky from Disgorge, who is their touring vocalist, and I believe now their full-time vocalist.
And he's good.
And Kevin Muller, I think it's Muller. And he's from Pyrexia, or at least he was. I think he's not in that band anymore, but he's also on here doing guest spots, and they're kind of like backing him up or taking over certain lines. It's just kind of a weird feel.
Yep, I agree.
Although even Frank stated in an interview that at the time of this recording, Terrence sent him the final demos, I guess, and he said, "Is this new guy on every song?" And Terrence says, "No, you're on some of them." But it was so close that even Frank couldn't figure it out. So
That's why it was, for me, too, number 8. It's just like they were feeling a bunch of shit out and nothing really stuck. It was definitely my least favorite of their full length.
plus,
for sure.
at this point, you've been at it 20 years?
Yeah, long
and some
time.
change. You've been through a lot of members. You're losing one of your staple members on vocals, and you got 2 dudes. At this point, it's Terrence Hobbs and Derek Boyer, really, who have been there for a brunt of everything. And they're like, "Well, what do you want to do? I don't know. Let's write these riffs, see what happens."
It's hard enough keeping a band together for 10 years, let alone, they're trying to stitch this thing together 20 years later, They had some spots there, in 2013 where they came out and it was ripping, but man, I hope what they're doing now, they're taking their time and really giving us, or giving themselves an album that they for themselves.
Yeah.
Plus, coming off a Pinnacle of Bedlam, that's a hard record to follow.
Yeah. No, that's a
how do you do that?
I also had this at number 8. It's another one that's just kind of there. I don't like the really polished production. It was Zeus that did the production this time. It's too polished for Suffocation. Suffocation needs to be raw. It's supposed to be gritty sounding. This seems just kind of sterilized, wiped clean. Drums are very clicky. It has that very polished modern death metal sound. It just doesn't feel like Suffocation up until you hear Frank growl. Some of the riffs are pretty cool. There's some decent songs here. Caught Between Two Worlds, Clarity Through Deprivation, I think are standouts, but most of this just kind of seems like them just treading water, staying afloat. And that's about it. I want more from Suffocation, and hopefully they're going to deliver more.
I had this as my number 8. Also my least favorite of the full albums. It was incredibly not that memorable. Gone was a lot of the melody that I enjoy, even in the heavy times. And it sounds like they just went back to a real, like Nick said, kind of a sterile tech death, and it just wasn't for me. So.
I really tried to like this album, mostly because I'm a giant Suffocation fan. So I mean, I wanted this to be really good. Again, like I said, coming off of Pinnacle, I wanted this to be really good, and it just wasn't.
Ideally, I would love to like every single thing by bands I love, but
of course,
for sure.
There's always a turn in the punch bowl somewhere.
Yeah, in recording, mixing, everything, it just seemed like way too by the numbers.
It just blends in. There's a lot of bands that play this sort of style, and I don't think one of them should be Suffocation. They should be doing like the older, kind of grittier stuff. That is where their strengths really lie, at least in my opinion.
So hey, if you guys are listening to it, you're working on stuff.
Bring us
There you
to
go.
Suffocation.
Yeah, right, for sure. Yeah, please bring us something.
Yeah, we'll eat it up
Suffocation.
regardless. But
Yeah, I mean, we're going to buy it.
yeah.
Right, it's a given that I'm gonna buy it. So
Yep, I will pre-order that vinyl.
Yep. So that brings us to the end of the Suffocation ranking. It was a pleasure to do. Actually, kind of sucked because I really like Suffocation. So it's really tough to rank albums.
I think the future's still kind of untold for this band. I'm curious where they go. Like, all right, from now on, no Frank. And that's sad, because Frank is an incredible frontman. The guy engages people so well.
And Nick and I got to meet him.
Solid
we
dude.
saw the Farewell to Frank tour,
Solid
and just
dude.
it was. And I had this whole big thing planned, like, oh, you were the first you guys got me into death metal. It was fucking sweet. And like I met him, and I was just like, this is awesome. So
I really wanted to go to that, and I missed that.
Oh, it was great.
I was pretty bummed.
But now they got Ricky, I believe, is going to be their full-time vocalist. And we've seen him with them, and he does a great job.
times, he definitely pays homage to Frank. He does Frank justice,
Yeah.
I think.
And
What
I think
they
as
need
long
is
as...
consistency. That's what they need.
Yeah.
I want to get that in there. They need some sort of consistency to get their ideas flushed out and to deliver a really solid album that they can, but they just need a little consistency.
I think as long as Terrence is in the band, which will probably be forever, this is pretty much his band now.
Yeah.
I think
The sad thing though is it's going to ride or die on him. As unfair as it is, the success of this band moving forward is going to be based on how creative he is. So
Yeah, which, I mean, take your time, guys. Take it and just flush it out, flush the ideas out, and you got a super bright future.
tap into that old school love.
I mean,
do
you know,
that.
now the something else working in their favor. While 2020 blew a giant sack of crocodile balls, it did leave a lot of people a lot of time to write music because there was nothing else to do. We were all in shutdown. So hopefully, during this time that they shut down, maybe Suffocation wrote some really nasty shit.
I think we're going to get a lot of good shit next fall, next winter.
Dude,
it's coming.
Yep.
It's coming.
Yep.
It's coming.
Yep.
I can't wait.
Me neither. And we can't wait for you to hit subscribe.
Yes,
and hit the notifications.
Hit if you like what you saw, even if you didn't like what you saw, at least
Please.
hit the like button. Just
It may not mean much to you, but it's everything, guys.
right. It is. It's a lot to us.
it is,
It's what I
honestly.
feed the mouths of my unborn children on.
For every subscriber we get, we will tase Jammin Jon.
balls. Right in the balls. For every like this video gets, we will tase John once in the balls.
No.
That's the first one.
No, we will
The
not.
second one is Nick firing us.
No, you know what? If we
I will let
You
you,
know
guys
what?
stay on for the tasing.
You know what?
You can stay on for the tasing.
You know what? If we make it to 15,000 subscribers in 2021, because right now we're at, what, 3? So if we make it to 15,000 subscribers,
You're gonna
I'll
let us tase you?
let them tase me. If we get 12,000 more subs in 2021, so we got a whole year to go up another 12,000 subs, I'll let him
Dude, I
tase
would
me,
go-
dude. I don't give a
I would go 20 because 15. I mean, that's
Nope, nope, nope.
You said 15.
You said it.
15.
I said
You
15.
it.
I don't care. Hey, look, if we get it, if we get to 20, cool.
I'm gonna
15 will be.
chunk
I don't.
this.
That's not where it's gonna stop.
Right.
That's all we got. Take care.